Okay, good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock. Actually, it's 1 minute past one. Welcome to our Hub Live, coming to you live from the Smart Hub. And I have a wonderful guest with me today, Toby Leon from Wanderlost. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, Elise. Nice to see you.
I think I only said half of your business name, Wanderlost and Found,
That's right.
I should have said.
That's right.
Thank you so much for being back. It's so good to see you again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful. Now, it's raining here. Is it raining where you are?
Sorry, it's actually quite sunny. No,
It depends on who you're talking about. Is the rain better? Is the sun better?
yeah.
Personally, I love the rain. Absolutely love rainy weather.
Me
But
too.
I know that you're a rainy person,
I'm a
rainy
vampire,
day
as you
person.
can see. So, I like the dark and the rain.
Sounds awesome. Now, what we're going to talk about today is actually nothing to do with dark and rain. It's probably kind of the opposite of dark. And it is all about growing an audience on Instagram. So it's putting a spotlight on your brand using Instagram. Now, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have YouTube, we have Pinterest, we have LinkedIn. Tell us a little bit about Instagram and its place in the digital marketing sphere.
Okay, in my personal opinion, Instagram has a lot more opportunity for the kinds of conversations that are quite difficult to have on other platforms because it's got this kind of double thing happening where it's a visual medium, but you can also actually use it as a micro blogging medium, for example. There's also a bunch of different ways that you can actually leverage what's possible in Instagram to give different experiences to people. Whereas, say, Facebook, a lot of us are there because we want to see what our friends are doing. We want to see what, right? We've got a very few select brands that we may give space in our feed. Instagram's quite different. It's got this visual element to us that has a different kind of level of response from us internally. We're looking for different things from it. Similarly, I would say Instagram and Pinterest can have a sort of vibe where you're actually coming for a visual thing, but it's also an information source. It's also a place that you go to find things out that you're just not going to get on other platforms. Twitter, for example, or that short form. So it's really about how you want to use it. But I think what people often mistake with Instagram is that it's a visual medium only. There's actually a really great way that you can leverage a lot of other things you can do on Instagram that allow you to use it in all sorts of different ways.
That's excellent. So, and this is a question. I don't actually know the answer to this. Do you know what the demographic is that's mostly on Instagram? My like vague understanding is that the older demographics more on Facebook and the younger demographics more on Instagram. But the very young demographics now move to TikTok, which is another platform that we can talk about at some point. Do you know vaguely who is mostly on Instagram?
That's a really good question because from my audience on Instagram, I can tell you that it spans the gamut. We're looking at 18 to 65 plus. What I would say is that those people are all coming for different experiences again. I would say that what I think is probably the most accurate answer, though, is between, say, 18 and 35, around there, leading up to 45 is where it starts to peter off. And the younger demographic is also, as you said, starting to peter off towards other platforms as well. So maybe
Yeah.
24 to 45 is probably an accurate kind of assessment. Those are people that would have been 18 or so, a little bit younger, even when Instagram first came out, that have evolved with the platform. And there are also people that would be around my age, 35, 36, 37, that have come into the platform over time when it lost its too cool for school, very young, influencer heavy kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, Rhonda, thank you so much for joining us. I'm here with Toby. We're talking all things Instagram and really how to grow an engaged audience on Instagram. Hey, Jay, thank you for coming to the Hub Live. I know that you'll get a lot of value just from having a chat to Toby before. So good to see you here. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask and we'll get Toby or maybe even myself to try and answer them. We'll see how we go. Okay, so Toby, Instagram, audiences. How do you get followers? Like, what's the go?
Well, I personally have taken a route that's a little bit different from a lot of the ads that you might see telling you how to do it, which is all about rapid growth. A lot of people will promote the idea of rapid growth as being something that's achievable or possible if you just pay them a certain amount of money, if you post a certain number of times each day, et cetera, et cetera. What I would like to talk about in detail today is the difference between an audience and a community. An audience observes, a community participates. So if we're looking at getting followers, I think playing a long game is probably going to serve you better in business, because it means that you are targeting the right people, having very targeted conversations with those people and engaging them in ways that audiences aren't. You're asking them to be involved to help you grow and build a community, right? Which is by design. An audience turns up at a certain time, a certain place, they paid a certain amount of money, they watch, and then they walk away, right? A community is invested in that community. They're invested in its development and its growth. So it's a very different conversation to have with people. So that's been my approach, but it doesn't have that rapid growth element to it. It does eventually build to a place where you can start expecting a certain amount of growth with a certain amount of investment, absolutely. But it's never about rapid growth, because rapid growth is a move fast and break things attitude, that Mark Zuckerberg quote, right? It's very much move fast, break things, get results quickly, right? Which doesn't actually allow for the kinds of nuanced conversations and real in-depth conversations that you can have with a community of people that actually help you understand exactly what they want, how they want it, when they want it, and how that's going to then grow out. So in terms of getting followers, which I much prefer to think of as them actually allowing you to lease a space in their feed. So rather than thinking of them following you, they've actually given you permission to take up space in their feed. So if we're talking about getting followers, adding value is obviously the best way to approach any kind of business question about how do we do this? What can I offer? And if we're looking at maybe a few different examples, if you'll give me some time, what I've done is I've approached it from an artistic bent, which is I'm there to serve people and help them grow artistically. Now I may be presenting my own artwork to them, but I'm also answering all of the questions that they ask me. I'm also presenting a whole range of different ways that they can find information that I've used that's helped me, the ways that they can find apps that I've used that have helped me. A hairdresser might need to take a very different approach. It's very local. They would know the people that are coming in, but how can they then add value and get followers? Well, by demonstrating what they do, demonstrating how they do it, demonstrating what those very fine details are that get results. Because I think another thing that people often mistake is they think sharing that is like giving away trade secrets. No one's going to be able to do what you do the way that you do it. No one's going to be able to do that. So if you watch this show called Nailed It on Netflix, which is this fantastic show where they get people to come in and try and recreate these incredibly detailed cakes, and they never do because they're not professional chefs who have trained for years and years and years to perfect that art, right? So this is what I'm talking about. If you're talking about getting followers, you really are talking about encouraging people to engage with you in a way that allows you to grow with them and them to grow with you. That's what a community is. So another example might be a painter and decorator, right? And similarly to the hairdresser technique, adding value by showing them what you're great at and allowing them the space to grow with you in a judgment-free zone. I think that's the best way to get followers.
Oh, I love that. Love that. Katie, Joy, Wayne, thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so Wayne has a question, but just before I read Wayne's question, I'm just going to comment on what you just said. You made a few incredibly valuable comments. The first one is it's much better to have a small community that are invested in your brand and in your product than have a large audience who are simply just looking and scrolling and moving on. So a very engaged community is a much better position to be in for a business. The second thing that I love is for you to kind of see the way in which people follow you as you leasing a little space on their feed. And that basically changes the whole picture in your head and the whole conversation that you have with yourself around what content to post. And then the third thing, and I'm using a bit of artistic license here, I'm just going to paraphrase what I understood you saying. The third thing is really to reduce the the distance between you and that in person that you're on their feed by making yourself more transparent, showing your trade secrets, showing people what you do, who you are, how you do it. And in that way, people feel a connection to you and your brand. And that's when they feel safe to engage. And that's when you can grow together. Would that be a fair summary?
Absolutely. Because we all fall into this trap of seeing perfect pictures of perfect people living perfect lives, right?
Yeah. And it's just, you don't feel connected to that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
On some level, we know it's not real, and yet it also incites this kind of deep sadness in a lot of us as well, because
yeah,
even though it's real, we're still striving for it. And that kind of relationship that influencers have with their followers is very one way. So if you're going down that route, I would just say that it is a very exhausting conversation to continually have to try and have with people, because once you set that bar, there's no room for vulnerability. There's very little room to actually be a human being talking to another human being. And I'm kind of tired of brands behaving as though they're this perfect space where there's this perfect world. I'm much more interested in seeing people grow and thrive and strive, rather than this fake world.
Yeah, I love that. Roxanne, Miranda, Daniel, thank you for joining us. Now, before we move on, here's Wayne's question. Can you please talk about hashtagging on Instagram, please, Toby?
Sure.
So I don't know if this is the right time. I think you also have some information to screen share with us. I feel like we're going to go through this whole hour and then go, we had some stuff to share. I never got to it. So just keep that in the back of your mind, Toby.
I will.
Hashtag, do you want to talk about that now or later?
I can talk about hashtags now. It's quite a nebulous topic. Here's what I would say is that don't use all 30 of them. I think that's a bit tacky.
Yeah, we all know those people. Yeah.
Don't use too few of them, because it won't have much of an effect. There's a consistency that comes with using hashtags that also has... Actually, let me go back a little bit and talk to you about it in this way. I think it's much better to think of hashtags like SEO, right? So if we think about hashtags, a lot of people will put, sunset, cocktail, these kinds of things that are quite blunt and broad. What I have done is actually gone much, much deeper than that. So when you actually do a hashtag search, you'll get a range of hashtags up the top that are related to that hashtag, and you can click onto that one. And if you go a few steps down that funnel, you can start finding hashtags that are niche for a reason. It means people are there to find something very specific. You're offering something very specific, balayage, for example, if we're talking hair, right? If you're offering something that specific, finding the niche within a niche of balayage, that's something that can actually start to get you in the top 9, because that's where you want to be. Because if you're not in that top 9 on Instagram, there's a very good chance that your post is not going to get that much engagement. What I can say is I've got an app called Flick, FLICK.app. It's a company out of London, I'm pretty sure. They're definitely UK based. And I find that really, really helpful. What it does is it allows you to put in the blunt hashtags that's kind of your frontal lobe first response thought about what this picture is. And then it will offer you hashtags that are more likely to get engagement based on your audience size, because that's also another consideration. If you've got a hashtag that you're using that is also being used by a brand that has 1 million followers, it's very unlikely that you're going to get into that top 9, simply because they're going to get more engagement across the board, shares, likes, comments, right? If you're looking at brands, let's call it a brand, for my personal Instagram that's got about 29,000 followers on it, even getting at the top of those Instagram hashtag feeds, for me is quite difficult a lot of the time, because there are other people that are doing things that are so niche and specific related to that, that if I don't consistently create things that are related to that, it's again quite hard. So when people talk about hashtags, I'm not meaning to sound evasive or like there's no answer. I am just saying it is a trial and error kind of thing. And if you can use an app like Flick, which presents those hashtags to you that you're more likely to rank for, and then also actually gives you analytics about how those hashtags have performed over time for you and your brand. Trust in AI. I think this is the other thing as well, is there's so much stuff out there that's actually made it possible for us not to have to do this kind of guesswork. And computers are just better at this than we are. They're just
Yeah.
better. So if you can pay, it's £14.99 a month for the subscription that I have, and it is worth it, 100% worth it. I've seen a much better engagement rate from hashtags, but it's also dipping just generally with hashtags, I found, because Instagram, owned by Facebook, wants you to advertise. They want you to spend money. So be aware of the fact that they are also going to, time and again, devalue that organic engagement to try and encourage you to spend money. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit more at a later stage in this conversation, about how you can do that without spending a bucket load of money.
Yeah, that's right. I think that is the unfortunate, or maybe fortunate, truth, is that free advertising, organic advertising used to be the way to grow the audience, but now Facebook and Instagram, owned by the same company, are definitely have changed things so that you don't really get much reach if you haven't put a few dollars towards whatever you're posting. Yeah. And so the new way to make it free is to have a self-liquidating offer, where you are getting people to pay for something that's really quite inexpensive to offset the marketing costs, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that in lots of ways, that's how I've built my audience.
Nice.
I am offering something unique and specific, I like to think, with my artwork. But in terms of the process advice that I'm offering people, there's nothing unique about that. You can get that from a bunch of different people on Instagram. People just like the artwork that I'm putting out, and they respect the fact that I'm engaging with them as human beings rather than as a top-down one-way street. In terms of the advertising approach, though, what I've actually done is, over time, I have targeted particular people with particular interests. I now have my own lookalike audience that I use that's worldwide. It's a 1% lookalike audience. So taking the entire world population and matching them to my audience and saying, target people that look like that, right? But only target 1% of the worldwide audience that looks like that. So it's quite specific. And targeted again, which means that now when I put money down for advertising, I have a pretty much guaranteed return rate on ad spend, which is great. It's just taken some time for me to do that. So I do consistently spend that money. I would just say you don't have to consistently spend a lot of money. Yeah. $50 a month. If you've got $50 a month, that's a great place to start. Don't be overwhelmed by the idea of spending money. Just start as small as you can, because it will return better results than trying to push organically, it's such a crowded market. 500 billion people on Instagram. It's hard.
Absolutely. Now, I want to, and I'm not sure, I think everyone's probably the same. We're all kind of curious about your Instagram feed. Do you mind sharing your page and showing us your personal Instagram page, and showing us what you've been doing and how we can replicate what you are doing?
Okay, happy to. Give me one moment. That's not him. Wait. There he is. Can you guys see that?
Nice. Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So where would you like to start? Is there anything specific you'd like me to show you?
So if I'm thinking from the people on our live, their perspective. So if they want to build their Instagram feed with the purpose of making a sale, right? So where do we start? What do we do? What are your tips and tricks?
Okay, so I would firstly say that this link here is vital, which means that you really want to think about how you are going to approach tying this link to a lot of conversations that you're having down here, which means that this link can change to become a link that, it services a whole bunch of different landing pages that you might have. So that adaptability of that link is vital. I do find that it is something that I refer back to again and again and again to get people into funnels. Right, to start that process. It's not an instant guaranteed sale. That's not its purpose. It's actually a lead generator. The other thing I would say is get a business account. get a creators page. It doesn't matter which one really. Both of them are going to give you back-end analytics that you're not going to get any other way. You don't actually have to be a fully fledged business to have an Instagram business page either. All you need is a Facebook business page, and that doesn't have to be a fully fledged business either. If you want to set up like a shell company, if you want to set up a Facebook business page that is specifically just there to allow you to create a business page on Instagram, do it. You can create another Facebook business page. Don't think too much about it in that way. In terms of then monetizing the stuff that's happening here on this page, a lot of that is actually my personal interactions with people and guiding them back to this link.
Okay, so show us an example of that. Can you click to maybe a comment, or do you private message? How does it work?
Well, I'd rather not show the private messages because actually then I'd be in a conversation with people. But a lot of it is happening in private message. So if I'm getting messages from people in my comments here, I'll often transfer that into a private message so I can have conversations with them that I might not want to have as long, rambling comments.
Yeah.
It's really dependent from business to business as well. So let me just say, if it was, for example, a hairdresser again, right? Looking at the kinds of services that they're offering, what I would say about Instagram is it's less about actively generating sales. It's more about getting people into a funnel where you can start to actually have conversations with them that are more sales oriented.
Nice.
Some people may want to take the approach on Instagram where they try and use that as their sales page. That is also something that is possible and achievable and doable. I haven't taken that approach. I've actually used mine as a lead generator, which means that people still have a sense from my page that it's a personal page, it's not a business page. And I think that has been one of its biggest successes, is that because I'm not leading with a sales-oriented personal brand, it still feels like they're talking to a human being. So sorry to give a roundabout answer there, but actually in terms of like direct things that I can show you, I think that's much more to do with what's happening on my website, which is a different conversation.
Okay, no worries. That you answered that really well. Thank you. Miranda wants to know, what are your thoughts about frequency of posting and ratio of pictures versus live posts?
Okay, good question. And this is again different for every brand, every page. What I've found is because what I do is so hyper specific to me. This post here, this last one here, that was a month ago. That was a month ago, and I've gotten an extra in the last month. I usually get about 1,000 followers a month from advertising. And I usually lose about 150 to 200 followers a month as well. Now, I've taken that churn rate and that success rate, if you want to look at it that way, as a way for me to take time and care to actually post things that are as detailed as this, which takes me a lot of time, right? This is all my own artwork. You can see the amount of layers in there. That's not something I can do day to day. I can't.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I can't just churn these out all the time. But what that does do is value quality over quantity, which is something that over time, people are going to come back for that, right? It also means that when it does arrive, it's a delicious surprise for people. They actually get a whole world within a world, right? So in terms of the frequency, it really does depend. I would say if you're looking at a local business, you want to be doing it at least a few times a week to stay in mind. But on top of that, if it's not adding value, don't do it. If it's, I have an all killer, no filler approach to my Instagram. Some people, because of the nature of their business, do need to post more frequently just to stay top of mind with people, especially I keep coming back to a hairdresser, especially a hairdresser where you've got people that are coming in every 5 to 6 weeks, hopefully, right? There's actually a process there in which you want people to continually come back to you. But if it's not adding value to them, don't do it. Don't post it. Don't post for the sake of posting because it shows. And remember, you're leasing space in someone's feed. And there's a certain number of times they might tolerate a random thing that you've posted because you felt compelled to put something out there because it's been a while. eventually they'll say, oh, they're just, it shows. You can tell.
Absolutely. Penny, Matty, Oren, Christy, thank you so much for joining us. I'm here with Toby Leon. We're talking about Instagram and how really to grow an engaged community on Instagram as opposed to just growing an audience rapidly. People who aren't very interested, they're just there, come and look and go again, as opposed to a community who are really engaged and want to know more and start a relationship with you. So if you have any questions around anything on Instagram or the platform, please feel free to ask them in the comments on our Facebook Live, and we'll get Toby to answer those for you. So Toby, what else should we be thinking about or looking at when thinking about Instagram and marketing on Instagram?
Let's look at some fun ways that you can engage your audience. I think, excuse me.
Nice.
I think that might be a fun thing to do, some practical things. I love
Awesome.
Q&As. They're a really, really great way for you to put in a minimal amount of effort to start, but get a lot of interest back. So if we look at you can see I love stories. I've got a bunch of stories up here. If we're looking at Q&As, it's important at this point to allow people to ask you anything, I think, to be really, really open. If you've got specific things that you want to ask people, that's also valid. But just remember that if you're going to do that, it takes a while to develop a relationship with someone. That means you can come to them with very specific questions and expect a response to that. Like, what do you guys think I should do about this thing that I'm trying to figure out that I haven't quite, like... No one really has the bandwidth when they're on Instagram to think
deal with that question. Yeah.
It's a lot, right? Ask me anything can also be a little bit too much for some people as well. But if you do it enough, you start to show people the kinds of things you're willing to talk about. So here's one. How did you get inspired to make these beautiful pictures? I took the time to not only answer their question, but also recognize that every time you're doing this, you're actually giving yourself more than one piece of content. So I'm now going to record a video of me answering a range of these questions and post that, because this has been 78 weeks. We can see up the top here since that was posted, right? And now I can go back to that and refresh that content. Any plans for going to Indonesia? What's your real job, right? It runs the gamut. To meet you in real life, this was great. I got to travel to a whole bunch of different places last year. Weight, size, income, number of siblings, hobbies, number of pets. I think because I'm presenting artwork to people, I can have this kind of unfettered fun, just like wild random questions. I can do that. If we were going to come back to the hairdresser again, it might be a great way to actually ask questions about techniques that people use at home to maintain their do, right? How do you maintain your do after you've left the hairdresser? We all look our best after we've left the hairdresser, and we want to maintain that. How do you do it at home? And then from that, you can actually take some of their answers and then show them how you do it as a professional. Shouting people out after they've asked questions is a delicious surprise that everyone will love. So if we're looking at how to actually keep people engaged, it's really asking yourself how you would actually talk to people in real life, because those are the sorts of questions that you would ask people in real life as a hairdresser. What are you doing at home? Oh, that's interesting. I tried doing it this way and then I did that. But what I found was if I did this and wrapped it at night, I could wake up in the morning and not have to do blah because I have to take the kids to school. It's those kind of really rich conversations that you can have with people that you can also transfer to Instagram or any space online, really, that I see a lot of people not doing. I see a lot of people having that one-way street conversation where they're giving all this great advice, but they're not asking for it back.
I love that. One thing that I learned a number of years ago is when you get asked questions, is to have your target market and more specifically your avatar in mind when you answer the questions. So you might answer the question of one specific person, but if you can think about the avatar that you have that represents your target market and answer that question for that avatar, then more people who are your customers will be able to relate to your answer more specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you could see from the Q&As that I was answering, I was also bringing in a visual element to every single one of them that matched the zany, oversaturated, intense style of my artwork.
Yeah.
which is a strange thing to be saying in this very plain, very plain but,
no, we can feel your vibe. We can look at we feel your vibe. It's perfect.
I think that's a really, really good point to make, Elise, because people use the word avatar as though it's disconnected from you and it's not a part of you. All it's doing is actually asking you to step outside of yourself for a minute and recognize that you're having a conversation with someone else who's also, in a nice Venn diagram kind of way, interested in all the same things that you are. But you've just got to remember that, you're not talking to yourself, you're talking to someone else. So how can you bring value to them in a way that is snackable, relatable, and able to be applied in their lives, rather than this, again, one-way conversation where you're dictating a whole bunch of stuff and just going, you're welcome, because that's what, no one likes.
Okay, so talking about a conversation, I have questions that we need to answer. So Jade says, do you think posts that take up the whole tile get more exposure than a cropped image? And then there's another one. I'll ask that question first, then there's another question.
Okay, so if we're talking about real estate, Jade, yes, absolutely. You want to go for a, I think it's 3x4. I try and go for 3x4 wherever possible, which is this size, right? Rather than a square, if possible, if you can. The reason that I do it is simply real estate. As you're scrolling through a bunch of different stuff, having that real estate is just going to get you a little bit more attention. So yes, I would absolutely agree with that. I definitely wouldn't go for a 9x16 frame that's quite thin, horizontal. If you're filming in that for YouTube, great, but make sure that you crop it in a way that's going to center you on an Instagram feed. So that is a really important consideration.
Okay, so we have two, thank you for that answer. Now we have two questions around link in the bio. So Jade says, can you explain what link in bio is and how to set one up? And then Roxanne says, I'm sorry, Toby, I don't get the link or the bio link thing you mentioned. I've clicked on yours. You said change it all the time, but I don't quite get it. So Can you explain link in bio?
Okay, so yes, I can. I use a platform called Later. And what Later is a version of Hootsuite Buffer. It's a scheduling program that allows you to schedule a whole bunch of content to be posted automatically to a range of different social platforms. One of the things I love about Later is that it's got a link in bio, which means that I can directly link my posts to websites. Right? So if we click on this one, this is a book that I was in, right? This is my profile on that book. So when I talk about change, I guess this is change for me because it means that it's updated with my feed, and it's like a shoppable feed, right? So people can actually go in and directly click on things from your feed. This is a Netflix show that I'm obsessed with about creating amazing flower sculptures. Right? What it means is I don't have to maintain as much of a change in terms of the actual link address, right? But I'm constantly changing and updating what people can access and find that relates back to my feed. Now, you might want to do that differently, right? So when I talk about change, you might actually want to directly link to a different landing page because you might be having a promotion one month. You might be advertising or talking about a particular range of things that you're doing to renovate your salon back to the hairdresser, right? And you might actually want to link to a rolling list of images of what's happening in the salon and how you're changing it. That link and the changes I was talking about, just to clarify, aren't necessarily about changing for the sake of change. They're about using that and relating it back to comments you're posting in your posts to say, still renovating, check out where we're up to, or, 2 for 1 on blah. And does that make more sense, or have I made it all more?
Okay. So I'm just going to unpack that a little bit, what you said. Right. So the first thing is that when you post an image on Instagram and you post a comment, you can't post a link there, can you? You can't post it. Right. So to overcome, so let's just say, for example, you post, I'm just going to use Jade's example, you post an image of an earring, of a model wearing earrings, and you want to give the people, your audience, the ability to click on a link to take them to that earring on your website to be able to purchase that earring. You can't actually do that in the comments. So what often happens is in the comments, you'll read link in bio. And then anyone on Instagram knows to go to, I'm trying to scroll on your Instagram page, to scroll up to the bio and you see the link there. And then when they click on that link should then take you to, say, the image on your website where that earring is.
Right.
For you though, and that could be anything. So let's say, for example, you are a personal trainer and you offer online personal training, then you can put an image for a personal training. You can say write a little thing below the image and say link in bio. People go to the bio, click on the link, and it takes them through to a landing page, which is have your first personal training session free of charge, book here in a Calendly link. So the link in bio basically is the link that you would in Facebook usually see with the image, but Instagram doesn't allow you to do that. Is that correct?
That's right, exactly.
Cool. Now, so the link in bio can link to anything really. And there's also another program called Linktree, where you can link your link in the bio to Linktree. I think it's linktr.ee. And if you go to Linktree, then there's multiple links that people then can follow to whatever programs you have or whatever products you have.
Simple and just keeps everything clean and neat, and you can update those links. They're basically just buttons, really, a list of buttons that lead you to different landing pages.
Absolutely.
So this page that we're looking at now is a version of that, really. It's just my feed that takes you to a different landing page if you click on different items.
I have to say, I think this is the most beautiful version of link in bio that I've ever seen. It's beautiful. Your artwork's really amazing. So show us how to set up the link in the bio, if you wouldn't mind. Can you go and show us what to do?
I think I can do it from here. 1 second. Yeah, I can. Okay, so when you have a business profile, actually, I'm pretty sure that they do it on personal ones as well. When you go in and edit your profile, there's a website link. That's it. Just put in a link. That's it. It's very.
So what you would do is you would put in. You could change it to your website.
Yep, you could change it every day if you wanted to. You could change it whenever you want. So it is a rolling thing. And I guess when I was talking about change, a lot of businesses I've seen will actually update that link with each promotion that they run, with each new product that they put out, with each this, that, the other. What I like about this version of it is that people don't have to actually look at any of the comments in my feed. If they arrive at my page, the first thing they click on is going to show them all of the different ways that they can access versions of my same, content, messaging, et cetera, et cetera. It actually just acts like a shoppable feed.
Okay, awesome. I hope that answers your questions. If you have any further questions, or if that didn't quite explain it clearly, if we didn't do a good enough job, please ask another question. We would much rather know that we need to explain it in a different way than just leave it where it's at. So Jade, Roxanne, please ask another question if you have another question. Okay, Toby, what else should we know about growing an engaged community on Instagram?
Well, I think one of the most important things that I can suggest is to listen. Listen. So I'd like to share a different screen with you, if I may. One moment. Where are we? How's that? Can you see this?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've looked at the difference between an audience and a community already. We've looked at the reasons that you would build a community versus a following. If we're looking at listening, we really want to focus on a personal touch. We've talked about that in some detail. I'm going to make this available to everyone as well, so don't worry about all of the stuff that's there. You don't need to understand it to follow along.
That'll be awesome.
Putting your values front and center, right? Making sure that people know who you are and what you're about. But listening, learning, and giving back, I think, are really important things to remember at every stage of a journey. And in that, one-way streets are dead ends, right? So sharing your story your way is vital to creating a devoted community. Everyone needs a leader. Hopefully you want a group of people that are helping you. If you can get to that point, that would be great. But no matter how good your story may be, leading without listening is going to wind up as a dead end. So always invite your community in. And actually, I did that from very early on, and I keep doing it. Now, you have to at some point get over the fact that you may not get many responses. There is a little bit of a sting that you're going to feel on a pretty regular basis, where you go in with one intention and hope. and not that many people respond, but other times they will. So there's no way that you're going to be able to magically get everyone to engage every single time. The thing is to keep trying and to keep engaging, because actually that signals to them that you're open. That signals to them that you're interested. So that's really important. I would also say learning as you grow. Right? So don't expect that you're going to be able to get it perfect the first time or present a message that's immediately understood to everyone. You are going to make mistakes, but I prefer to think of that as learning. They're not mistakes, they're learning. So creating opportunities for people to have their say about the development of your brand allows that learning process to be something that creates a non-judgmental space where you're testing ideas, right, against actual needs and wants that they're sharing with you. So it becomes a two-way street, right? And that's where Q&As become really helpful. Polls become really helpful. I would say be judicious with them. Don't consistently keep asking people, because that also indicates that you're not actually clued in to what's happening enough to be able to figure it out. But do stage them enough so that, you know, you can consistently have that kind of conversation. Right. So those Q&As that I was showing you earlier, they've also allowed me to realize that there's a series of questions that people are consistently asking me that are in the same vein. They may not be exactly the same question, but they're around the same sorts of topics. They're asking me the same kind of thing. They're leading to the same sorts of conversations, which tells me give people more of what they want. Right. It takes a lot of guesswork out of the whole thing. If you can move past that sting that we were talking about before, where people may not interact the way you want, and actually keep doing it, it does get to a point where a lot of the guesswork is taken out of it for you, and you can start to put your best foot forward. Let's put it that way. And giving back, I think, is a really important thing as well, because if you're asking people to get involved in your community in any way by polls, Q&As, it's really important to recognize it's a two-way street, right? So they don't have to break the bank. You know, rewarding a community can be mutually beneficial, actually, because every contest that you might put out is a really great opportunity to get user-generated content, right? Take a photo of yourself using blah, hashtag blah, right? That's already a whole bunch of stuff that you've just gotten for free, actually help you. So that's really important to recognize. You don't have to continually give prizes. It's not about bread and circuses. It is actually about, again, creating a community. And when you invest in posts, right, that are just there to serve and delight, that have no business goals attached to them besides making people happy, you're building trust and warmth, right? It's serving you while it's serving them. So if you can maintain that sense that listening and learning and giving back are actually a two-way street, I think that's when you start to get into the really sweet spot with a community.
I love that. Miranda says, and quite rightly so, what a great resource. Thank you, Toby. That's absolutely right. Thank you, Toby. Pleasure. I just want to go back to our previous link in bio conversation. Jay did ask a further clarification question. Yep. So the question is, but do you set up the quote unquote linkin.bio part of the URL in your website builder?
No. Okay. So the platform that I use, which is Later, can you see the little tiny little favicon up there? Yeah. So I'm going to make that available. I'll share that too. They actually do all of that for you. So I actually set all of this up inside Later, and then they manage the link in bio. So I don't have to do anything on my website builder. No.
Okay. And you'll share all of this information with us, right?
Yes, I will.
You're going to post that in the comments.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Hey, Leah. Hey, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm here with Toby Leon. We're talking about how to grow an engaged community on Instagram. Toby's just shared a heap of great information with us, and also this resource that he will post in the comments. If you have any questions, we'll wrap up probably in a couple of minutes. So if you want to sneak in a last question just before we say goodbye, please feel free to post that in the comments straight away. And while you have time to consider what you want to ask, Toby, what else? Yeah, get quickly. What is there anything else, but just before we wrap up, that we should consider about building an engaged audience and community on Instagram?
I would say be kind to yourself, because you are going to get a lot of dejection and rejection where you try and put things out that you're really invested in and you don't get the responses that you want. I would also say take your time. Don't get trapped in that very, I'm going to say, masculine energy of continual, like, must produce, post. Actually, what I've found is that that's distanced a lot of people. I do pay a lot of close attention to who drops off, and people that might have been engaged for long periods of time that drop off. You kind of wonder, what was it? What did I do? And you may not always be able to know exactly. Sometimes I've asked them. Sometimes I've reached out and asked them, and that's because I'm going to say about 7,000 or 8,000 people that are following me right now were following me before I put any of my artwork up there. It was just photographs that I was taking, right? They've stayed with me. So the fact that they've stayed with me, if I see one of those people drop off, and I have a pretty good sense of who they are, that's something that I just want to reach out and ask them about. And most of the time, they're happy to tell you. Again, keeping that conversation up is really important. And on top of that, also paying attention to the little things. Because if we're talking about a community, we're probably talking about a smaller audience. And so each person matters in a different way. If you're talking about a large audience of 1 million people, yeah, that churn rate of people dropping off, you might say, well, it's just that. We'll get some more. That's the attitude shift that's quite different between an audience and a community.
I love that. I think really we're moving into an age where personalization is everything, and where, as I mentioned before, the distance between you in your brand and your customer needs to become smaller, not larger. And it's not an us and them, it's a collaboration. It's becoming businesses more and more about collaborating and co-creating the future together. So I do love that you are shining a light on the fact that we need to pay close attention to every single one of our followers, get to know them, look at who likes and who doesn't like your posts, get to know who is there, and pay attention when they go and ask them, why did you leave, and pay attention to what they say. And I love, in the same way as when you have a big event or a party, and you're looking after every single one of your friends and you want to get around to every one of your friends and check in with them. I think that's exactly what Instagram in this context should be, where you're actually hosting a party. You want it to be entertaining and fun and inclusive and warm, and get a great sense of belonging for people. And every time your post comes up on their feed, that's the sense that they should get, and they should get that you know them and care about them. I think that's really important. I love that that's what you've highlighted today. Thank you, Toby. You were awesome. Now, Miranda has another question. Do you have any process for dealing with negative engagement from followers? Great question.
Great question. And yes, I do. My process is to look at it as an opportunity, not to be it. Firstly, wait until your emotions are not running as hot as they may be when you first read it. Don't respond emotionally. Don't do it. If it takes you 48 hours to get to a point where you can react to that in a way that is not emotionless, but is not driven by emotion, take that time, because you don't want to get into a tit for tat spat, and you also don't want to sound like an a-hole who's just having a bit of a tantrum because someone said something that may actually be coming. Again, remember that you're reading something, you're not hearing their voice, so their tone may be completely different to the way that you're interpreting it. So I always make sure that I just disentangle myself from my emotions, and I actually try to ask questions rather than telling them what I've done and why I've done it and how they should feel about it. Right? I use it as an opportunity to ask questions. The questions that are the most likely to get you the best responses are what and how. Don't ask questions like a lawyer. Do you think? Is that what you're saying? Can you explain what you meant exactly by that? Ask questions like, oh, what are you hoping to kind of, talk to me about, because I'm not exactly sure what you mean by this part. I'd love to talk more. Always make sure that your call to action is about curiosity as well. Is not, can you explain that? You don't, you know, make sure that you're coming from a place of curiosity, engagement, from a place of warmth as well. So curiosity, warmth, and also kindness, you know, which is why disentangling yourself from the emotion is really important.
Oh, great answer. Katie Joy has another question. How does Toby know who drops off? Is there a notification? You know how we said when people leave, like just unfollow you, how do you know?
Well, I have an app for that. So I'm going to share that with you as well. I also use this app actually to unfollow people that I might be following as well, because it works both ways. If people are following me, and a lot of people do this, if people are following me just to get me to follow them back, and I've been following them for a while and they're not liking any of my posts, here's the tricky thing, right? It ties back to the fact that Instagram is showing your stuff to a whole bunch of different people, right? And you want to make sure that the people that it's showing to matter, that the people that it's showing to are genuinely interested in what you're serving. So when I look at people that have dropped off, I try to make those connections as well about, are they connected to other people on the platform that are following me? Because you can see that, you can see who their friends are. I do a bit of a deep dive, but I also don't spend hours and hours on it. You know, you can't, once you get to a certain point. In the early stages, when I had 5,000 followers, very close attention. 5 to 10, still a lot of close attention paid to who was dropping off and why. And those were the people I might have reached out to as well personally and just had a chat with. At this point now, I'm doing less of that because I'm seeing that generally I've got a pretty good consistent return on advertising spend. Getting about 3 to 4 followers for every one AUD that I spend, and maybe one of those people drop off. So a 25% churn rate is pretty much industry standard across a lot of businesses. So that's great. I'm seeing a good return on advertising spend, but in terms of seeing those people who have dropped off, I'll share the app for that.
Okay, so I'm actually, just before we wrap up, because I do think that we need to say goodbye, can you believe that more than almost 52 minutes gone already in our conversation? Great talking to you. Thank you for sharing so much information, Toby. But I'm going to ask you to share one last little bit of information with us, maybe in the comments of the Facebook feed. Could you share with us all the apps that you use to help you grow and manage your Instagram page? Thank you. That would be amazing. So you'll just put that as also the resource that you've shared with us today. That'll go in the comments, as well as links to the apps or names of the apps that Toby uses to manage his Instagram page. Now, Mr. Toby Leon, Wanderlost and Found, you're an absolute champion. Thank you so much for everything you shared with us today. Wonderful seeing you again. I hope to have another HubLive chat with you sometime soon. Really appreciate it. But I want to actually invite you and everyone else, if you're watching our HubLive now, to come to the Smart Hub in person on Monday, because the Chief Entrepreneur, Leanne Kemp, will be visiting us from 9:30 to 12 on Monday. Again, there'll be a link in the comments to register. You do need to register, please, so that we know that you'll be there. And basically what Leanne is visiting us for is to talk about the tools, resources, pivots, pirouettes, and perseverance in business through this whole COVID pandemic. And, you know, seeing COVID as the new normal. We would absolutely love to include you in the conversation, to see you at the Smart Hub, which is 208 Key Street, Customs House. It'll be upstairs. Just make your way up the stairs at the front of the building at 9:30 on Monday. We would love to see you there. Leanne will be waiting, and definitely happy to, and very, very happy to engage you in the conversation. So Toby, come to Rocky before Monday. You have a few days to get here. We would love to see you. And yeah, if you're in Rockhampton, obviously, please make your way and please register for the event. But thank you so much, sir. Much appreciate your involvement. And we will see you again next Thursday at 1 o'clock for our next HubLive. Take care. See ya.